This is the future, I'm convinced. It may sound a bit silly, but not at all. This is how we have to cope with having 10 billion people on the planet. First thing to do, I'm afraid, we will have to become vegetarian, then we can support a vast number of people. But this is how the cities of the future will have to look. This is the only way you are going to more or less banish the suicide rate in cities. This is what our deep human nature wants. This is in tune with our genetics. This is how it always has been. Okay, no mountains, but plenty of forests, plenty of water. And look, I'm not the only person who loves the Netherlands. I'm backed up by millions upon millions of geese and ducks and waders. And here it is. Where in the world would you find such beauty as this in the middle of a city? It's insane. So much water, so much bird life. The place is pulsing with nature and full of life. Even from here, this beautiful place, I can see a skyscraper over there. So what? Look what's all around me. Now, we need this. Human beings just do. Ever since the cave, I'm convinced. Well, it's a far more interesting question than you might suppose at first sight. The relationship, what is it, between an Englishman and Almere? Well, it goes back well before Almere was even thought of, but formed the framework of its very existence much later on. So, London, that was the model city for the world for the whole of the 19th century, early 20th century. And there was an enormous problem, simply this. The population of London kept growing, yes, but it kept growing because people from the countryside were sucked into it. The death rate was so very high. If it hadn't been drawing on the rest of the country, it would have just been one big graveyard because of cholera, diphtheria, dysentery, all the waterborne diseases, no sewerage, no real planning, nothing. Just grew, prospectors, the builders had just let loose, chaos. Now, eventually, of course, Bazalgette came along and put in a wonderful sewerage system and the death rate fell. But there was a man who really worried about this. He was a clerk working for Hansard, the diary of Parliament, really. But in his spare time, he really thought about this problem. And he came up with, I think, a wonderful solution, which much later, way after his death, we can see all around us here in Almere. Now, his name was Ebenezer Howard, and despite that, he was a thorough Englishman. And here are some of his beautiful plans. Here we have the Evenaar in Almere Buiten, right down to the planning of the centre, where he wants there to be a library, a theatre, a hospital. This could be the centre of Almere Stad. So, all this, Ebenezer would never have been able to think of such a thing. All this has been reclaimed, taken from the sea. There's a lack of guilt. You can have as much space as you like. You're not going to feel this should be farmland or so on. You make your own nature. Look at this, look at the beauty here. The wonderful, all these rosebay willow herbs, all these rough plants that have moved in here of their own accord. And I happen to know that every single tree you see was planted by hand, which no Englishman could ever even imagine. It's incredible Dutch persistence and the Dutch way that they can cope with a quiet life, planting trees every day. God, look at the result, it's superb. And then the wonderful imagination of dealing with this vast amount of water. Making your own country, making your own land, that's something the English could never do. In fact, when they wanted to in East Anglia, they had to import the Dutch. And they did with the recent floods. Nobody was allowed to say anything about it, but there were 600 Dutch engineers were slipped into the country. The whole of East Anglia is made by the Netherlands. As you can see from the architecture there, you even have windmills. I think it's a kind of paradise. And this will be how cities will be, I hope, and certainly in the developed world.